Hello there, our dear esteemed viewers. My name is Douglas Drake Onen. This week we are discussing university students' welfare and the underlying issues pertaining the welfare of students in the various universities. Joining me to discuss this very pertinent and interesting conversation is a panel of distinguished ladies and gentlemen who will help us unpack the conversation and give perspective to the topic. So in no particular order, I'll go ahead and let my panelists introduce themselves, and then we can dive straight into the conversation. I'll begin from my immediate right to my extreme right, and then we can start the conversation. Mr. President, you're most welcome.
Thank you so much, Drake. Hello, our dear viewers. My name is Reagan, Mwebesa, fourth-year student at Kyambogo University pursuing a Bachelor's of Science in Land Surveying and Geoinformatics. I preside over the Students' Guild as the president. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you here again, Mr. President. Looking forward to a thrilling and interesting conversation.
Thank you so much.
The only lady on the show.
Thank you so much, Mr. Drake. My name is Adiru Daisy. I'm a fifth-year medical student, Makerere University, aspiring UNSA Vice President. It's glad to be here.
Glad to have you here as well.
Thank you.
Prime Minister.
Thank you, Laditonen. To our dear viewers and our fellow panelists, my name is Adroni Rodney from Makerere University, pursuing a bachelor's degree in quantity surveying in my fourth year of study. I also serve the Students' Guild as the Prime Minister, and I'm also a government-sponsored student. That is very key for our discussion today. And I'm also a proud affiliate of Northcote Hall at Makerere University. So I look forward to a wonderful discussion, one that will offer real solution and contribute to society positively.
Thank you. Looking forward to having those insights in this conversation. John, most welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, Drake. I am Tumwine Esau, a student of land surveying in fourth year at Kyambogo University. And in the guild, I am serving as a Minister, Social, Campus and Off-Campus Affairs. Thank you so much for having you. Looking forward to a positive deliberation.
All right, thank you. Rodney, let me just begin with you. A few days ago, we saw the Guild President, Makerere University, His Excellency Nsamba Lubega, having a chat with Pastor Sempa. And that conversation is primarily among the reasons as to why we're here, among other issues that we are to discuss. But I want us to start with understanding the hunger question that is looming in Makerere University, but also affecting very many of the students who are, first of all, government-sponsored, among others. So give us context to the conversation, particularly from that angle.
Yes, thank you so much once again. Now, before even we delve deeper into dissecting our theme of the day, we must first understand what is welfare, what is student welfare. We have to look at it holistically. So, welfare, or student welfare, in its holistic nature, encompasses a number of aspects, ranging from financial welfare, we have social welfare, we have physical well-being, we have mental well-being, and things as such. So looking at the various aspects of welfare, physically, when do we determine that students are okay in a university setting? Are they able to access medical services? Are there facilities on campus where they can exercise and things as such? Looking at the mental side of it, do we have counseling facilities where students can access help when they are grappling with mental health related challenges? The most important one being financial well-being. Can a student afford a decent meal? Can they afford a decent accommodation? Safety and security, for example. Is the environment they are living in safe? Are they able to move within maybe the precincts of the university or around without the fear of maybe being hit on the head at night or having their items stolen? We also have policies, inclusive and student-friendly policies. Recently, we have our brothers at Kyambogo University that have been having a protest over tuition increment by 50%. So that is also part of welfare. Then looking at extracurricular activities, are students able to associate freely within their school environment? Actually, for instance, in Makerere University, she will attest that we are having challenges in this specific area to the extent that a student cannot hold an event without first having to seek ratification from management, with all social activities under curtailment. This is all welfare. So if we are to observe welfare generally across all universities, especially public universities, we are looking at well-being of students being at an all-time low. And that is why we are having very many uprisings, very many demonstrations by students and things as such. Recently, when our guild president went to the United States of America, and when he was having an engagement with Pastor Semper, he actually cited that even in the students' associations within the US, people are facing similar challenges, that the basic problems are cross-cutting everywhere. Students are grappling with what to eat. Students are grappling with where to sleep. And if we are to actually scale it down to simple terms, student requires three things. Are they able to study? Are they able to sleep? Are they able to eat? So that is looking at the well-being of students. Now, we also have to understand, Mr. Drake, that who are the stakeholders in ensuring that we have students who are okay, who hold a stake in the well-being of students, if I may put it like that. Firstly, we have the students themselves. It gets to a point that we as students are the primary duty bearers of our well-being, be it physical, mental. We have the university administrators, actually, who are entrusted, who sign a social contract with the students to ensure their well-being while they are starting off campus. Then we also have parents who have a key role to play in the well-being of their students. And even student leaders, of course. It goes without mention that student leaders play a critical role in advancing the welfare of students. But looking at the situation at Makerere University, where students have been in semester for about 3 months without accessing or having access to allowances, that is mainly the government-sponsored students. And actually, even if you look at this discussion, you realize that if we are to give a comparison between private students and government students, you find that private students are actually disproportionately affected compared to government students, because they have a certain portion of their tuition that is being funded by government. But then, looking at government-sponsored students, we've been 3 months down the road in the semester. We haven't had people receiving allowances. And I'm told that our colleagues from other universities have had access to these allowances. Unfortunately, the case at Makerere University is different. So along the way, the students' leadership has always stood up with the students to try and present the plight of students to the university management. However, we've been met with undue aggression, we've been met with intimidation for speaking up for students, and at the end of the day, we are also curtailed in one way or another. And recently, the Dean released a very controversial statement that actually further fueled skepticism among students as to whether this office really accurately represents the plight of the students. Because not so long ago, I think last week, we decided as a students' leadership that enough was enough. Students were going hungry. Students would come and knock on doors of leaders asking for what to eat. And at the end of the day, we are not so different from them. We are also subjected to similar circumstances. So we decided to mobilize amongst our students and have a peaceful march to Senate, where the administrators sit. And we sat down and we said, look, we are hungry, we don't have what to eat. We are entitled to these allowances which are taking ages to come, which actually questioned whether the university really prioritizes the well-being of students, because they parade a narrative that with budget cuts across public institutions, priorities have been realigned. But what is that they are prioritizing over students who are presumed to be the biggest stakeholders? Because we can't have a university existing without students. So we had an issue where students go hungry, students don't have what to eat. Even during our protests, some 2 students fainted, and it has been making rounds on social media. And that is when the dean was forced to come out and make a statement to that effect. But students are really suffering, Drake. Students are facing the worst. And it has become a customary practice. We shall confirm with our brothers from Kyambogo, but since I joined in my year 1, we had been getting allowances timely. Unfortunately, along the way, it has become a recurrent practice that students have to fight to even get what they're entitled to. So that puts us in a very tricky situation. And at the end of the day, the students continue to cry to us, the student leaders. So the situation at Makerere is representative of actually the broader spectrum of students within other public institutions. It also goes without mention that there's also a disproportionate effect on public universities vis-a-vis private universities. Because you can't tell me that I am at KIU and I pay 5.5 million for a course in medicine, and you're not going to provide the bare minimum. So we find that these challenges are predominant in public institutions. So there is really a problem.
All right. Let's just quickly, from what you have given us, it's a very wide spectrum to the issue at hand. And I like how you first break down the various welfares that we're looking at, and entirely then narrowing it down to what the issue at hand is at Makerere University pertaining the government-sponsored students. Now let's just also understand a deep dive from the perspective of Kyambogo University. I'm glad that we have the president here with us. Let's understand the narrative that is in Kyambogo regarding the welfare of the government-sponsored students.
Well, thank you so much. I am very glad that I finally have an opportunity to discuss one of the things that is eating up our institutions. Kyambogo, as Kyambogo, has scored with allowances, particularly food and living out allowances. But we are reliably informed, and we know very well, because I've been in Kyambogo for 4 years, that government no longer releases funds that would facilitate students at faculties. Those are faculty allowances. Government no longer releases funds that are titled internship allowances. How do we expect a student on district quota from Kabela Maido to rent and stay in Kampala for internship, transport himself to an internship place, feed himself, and still take himself back home without an allowance that is entitled to them? I want to really try to elaborate about this, that the conceptualization of the government scholarship was targeting a needy student. So I imagine myself as a needy student from a very humble background, transiting in a university setting where I'm not even given the bare minimum to survive. We all understand that the Bible says we all shall not live on bread, but we can't starve to death. That is the reality. So at the end of the day, so many people say government students are entitled, but we need to understand the concept. I had a chance a few weeks ago to be at State House to present issues of the university students, and I hinted on this. We can't be transiting in universities where we pay per semester but receive money on quarterly basis. Universities operate per semester. And this is the reason we are given as students at the end of the day, that you see, we received little money this quarter, so therefore we won't be paying you. But the government of Uganda, in its knowledge, is supposed to understand that these are students who operate on a semester basis. When we expand deeply, not just from government students, welfare entails security as well. As I speak today, more than 20 students in Kyambogo University have been arrested. And what is the reason? They are protesting to have an erection. Having an erection for a student is a right, because the laws that govern a university are supposed to be aligned with the national law.
Yeah.
It is a right of every Ugandan to vote. It is a right of every student transiting in a national institution to vote. Management has taken steps and deprived students of this right. At the end of the day, because students are misinformed and even some of them misled by administrators and even by politicians amongst themselves, they pinpoint us as leaders that you have not done your part. But in the event that leaders have constituted an electoral commission, which has been failed by members of management and even by some members in it itself, it means that students' welfare is not paramount.
Yeah.
We all understand that these institutions we study from are not just built structures. We are the institutions ourselves. If I don't have a decent place to sleep, if I don't have food to eat, how am I going to achieve? Because when you are understanding, you see there is even a narrative they drive that these people, how can the government pay for you? And then you also expect it to pay you. But let us not forget that Uganda in the past used to pay for university students, almost all of them, and would even pay them. So has the education changed? Is the Bachelor's of Land Surveying of 1980 different from what I'm pursuing? So now that we have even privatized the majority, why have we even failed to cater for the interest of the minority? And that is a question that I pose. That before we only just pinpoint administrations and managements, we need to also pinpoint the Parliament of Uganda, where you appropriate 500 billion for a company that is falling, 300 billion to Roko, and you fail to appropriate money to Kyambogo Makerere. You strike across budget cuts, but you can't strike on things that really do not matter. What matters in this country? If education is a paramount thing, if health is paramount, why don't we have this? I want to really challenge you, my brother Drake, and so many panelists here, that you go and see the medical centers in our universities. It is a clear representation of Uganda. The way you can say Uganda is a map where you find, if you now, for example, categorize, if you get a data set of Uganda and categorize it, break it down, higher odds are poor health service delivery will dominate, poor education services will dominate, and this is what entails welfare. If I don't have a functioning ambulance at my university 24/7 for 30,000 Ugandans, I don't know whether you get the argument. I have one, and it will work on days when they feel it is right for it to work. If I don't have a functional medical center for 30,000 Ugandans who pay, government students are around 4,000. We have 37,000 Ugandans at Kyambogo. 30,000 or 37,000 in total don't have a functional medical center. What do they get at the end of the day? Panadol when they get a problem. If the security is insecurity itself in my institution, if they arrest a student and talking about it is also a case to answer, what welfare are we even discussing? So at the end of the day, we have, you see, one time in 20, when they shot Kawesi, they asked Dr. Kano Chiza Besigye that, what is your comment? He said Uganda is a mafia state. By then I was a very young man. So when he said the mafia state, I thought of mafias in games and on TV. But the reality is that the mafia I have understood today is that power is held by those who are not in office. You find Kyambogo is falling, Makerere is falling over issues of welfare, and who is in charge is not even an administrator in Kyambogo. You find that a payment of students of Makerere was uploaded on the system, but an official in the Ministry of Finance in charge of clicking and the payment is made has not yet felt like the welfare of students of Makerere is paramount. If this government of Uganda has trusted our administrations to lead over our affairs, why don't they trust them to pay us? Because if the Vice Chancellor and the University Secretary are the ones in charge, trust me, this payment would have been made, because they understand the internal pressure that is being built within the students. But when you find issues of Makerere being handled by one not in Makerere, issues of Kyambogo being handled by one who is not even attached to Kyambogo, it fails us. So we appreciate whatever steps that could have been taken to ensure that students' welfare is important. But we feel, and I know they feel, and everyone else who will tune into this platform will understand and accept the reality that students' welfare has been falling, and it is actually right now on a very steep slope.
Definitely.
It is at a point where we can no longer predict where it rolls next, but it keeps rolling, because at the end of the day, we have normalized the abnormal. It is normal for a student to be arrested these days. It is normal for a student to be charged. It is normal for a student to be taken from school and remanded for 3 weeks, because our society has made the abnormal look normal.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, we need to be very calculative and very intentional. I don't know where to talk about the problems of this country anymore, because if I even talked at State House and we have not even seen any step being taken, where else will we talk?
All right.
So that's it.
Interesting submissions. Let's now break this down and make it in bits. Right now, I just want us to look at the health, medical welfare of the students. And you yourself, you are a doctor in training, and that's a sector where we have seen very many students are greatly affected. The context that Mr. President here gives us is just a brief synopsis of what the medical environment is like in these various institutions that we're talking about, particularly in the public institutions. Yes.
There is a MOOBS student.
Was it a MOOBS or
MOOBS last week.
Yes.
A MOOBS student passed on at hostel because of ulcers. In our year one, an engineering student committed suicide. The guy climbed up to the 4th floor and threw himself on the ground. Mental health issues. So the reality is that we are transiting in a society with millions of questions and tens of answers.
True.
But if any Ugandan of goodwill lands on our presentation today and they have the capacity to push this forward, let us have better in terms of health, in terms of counseling, in terms of mental health, because at the end of the day, if we have very many insane Ugandans, they posted and said, Ugandans, most of them are mad, most of them are not okay, and people were celebrating. I felt like now these ones who are celebrating, first of all, they fall in the category. Because when you find the majority of the young people are not sane-minded, where is the future of Uganda? Because these guys are around, they are not about to go. They are still around for 10s and 40s and 50s of years. So where is Uganda heading? I thought if Uganda is a stem we aim to achieve, then the roots must be strong enough.
Yeah.
So that is where the issue is, and I hope and pray maybe a miracle could happen.
But the miracle is you, her, him who is supposed to instill that change. But let me get to you, John. You're the Minister of Social Affairs at Kyambogo, and still we are discussing this issue of welfare, and that just falls directly in your docket. Take us away.
Okay. Thank you so much, Drake. Now, the issue of welfare, I would love to say that students' welfare is the engine of success of the students academically. Because if it is not worked on, if a student is not worked on mentally, if his emotional intelligence is low, there are high chances that in the performance of exams, it is also going to depict there, and he's not going to fill in what he's supposed to do at the right time. And if his health is also not okay, then there are chances that he may fail to sit for exams, or he might not execute his capacity while sitting an exam. If the security is low, there are chances that that person is not going to complete the semester because of insecurity purposes. That person is not going to read very well because his phones or other gadgets have been stolen by thieves and what. So when we go back to the social aspect, the docket that I handle so much at Kyambogo University, we do well, all of us know that there is this saying, a young saying, that work without play makes John a dull boy. And to me, as John, entertainment is one of the things that could kill out the stress and clear someone's mind to make sure that that mind is now back to sane and the person can reason very well and very fine. So,
don't we have, young people have various forms of entertainment, and oftentimes than not we see that the entertainment is taken to the extreme. So how do we then balance the form of entertainment to help them relieve the stress?
Oh, the balance of entertainment. Now this comes back to how the organizers of the entertainment are collaborating with several departments. Now I'll give you a case in scenario. For example, the recent Freshers Ball at Kyambogo University. If you're informed, it ended at 11 p.m. And I was faced with a lot of criticisms that the event is actually ending at 11 p.m. We're expected to go up to 1. And some universities go up to 1. In the previous regimes, it has been going up to 1 or midnight. But by 10 p.m. in the night, we got intel that there are insecurity cases coming up and people had already started fighting. So to safeguard the students and the bigger picture, because at the point we have entertained students from like 5 up to 10 already, so I think that is enough. Why don't we now look at safeguarding them instead of letting them do what they want, but let us do what they need at that moment. So it depends on how you collaborate with these other departments. So it is all about how I can work with the security department, the counseling unit, the dean of students, to make sure this can be a success.
All right. Rodney, let's talk about the issues to do with our generally constitutional right as a student. And the constitutional right entails, as you mentioned, right to vote, freedom of assembly, and freedom of speech, among others. And recently we have seen in most of the universities, when student leaders speak up or when individual students speak up, they're either met with a letter, a warning letter, a suspension letter, or an expulsion letter. That alone speaks the reason as to why oftentimes people opt for means, let's say, a riot or a demonstration, is to voice out their concerns, because other avenues or channels have failed to be listened to. And that's why we see these demonstrations, we see these peaceful demonstrations that our students opt for. And what we have seen is you're either suspended, you're given a warning letter, or you're expelled. And that is greatly curtailing the right of freedom of assembly, of association, of speech in universities, which is also affecting the quality of leadership of various various guild governments in the various institutions. Give us the context of MOOC.
Just before even I go to the mock situation, I would want to add on or supplement what my brother Reagan mentioned in his earlier preamble. So he talked about something very interesting about government sponsorship and whether it is an incentive to the poor or a reward for academic excellence. Now, speaking about myself, I was very privileged to go to nursery, primary school. Then I went to St. Mary's College, Lugazi, where I had a bursary. They call them bursaries. I had a bursary up to senior 4, and then went to Kawempe. I don't think any of you knows it, but it is there in Kawempe. It's called a Brilliant High School, where I was lucky enough to score maximum points, and I got admitted on government sponsorship. However, the sponsorship, much as was a reward for my hard work, I'm from an indigent background. I'm from a family where we are not considered to be rich. So the only shot at having an education or a decent education was through the sponsorship, which is now sustaining me at the university level. And then plus the supplementary allowances. You see, not so long ago, government came out to actually make a statement, if you are all very familiar with the idea that government wants to do away with these allowances. So it made me question a lot of things. It made me question the sanity of our duty bearers in this country and where their priorities lie. In 2013-2014, the academic year 2013-2014, it was a stage at Makerere where university administration took a bold decision to actually start a phased removal of providing food to students. And not so long ago, students used to have meal cards. People would access food, would simply show their meal card because the university had people responsible for providing food to students. Then, however, in around 2014, government, the administration in its move to shift away from non-core services decided to eliminate this service. And the reason behind it was that they wanted to shift their focus to actually concentrate on teaching and research. So in my mind, I asked myself, did providing food to the students in one way or another affect teaching or research or both?
Oh, but it actually supplements each other.
Yes, definitely. So we come to 2016 where we have students coming up to actually complain about services, because in 2014, when the university did away with cooking food or catering for students, it brought in private contractors who started now doing that role and providing food to students. However, around 2016 now, students started complaining about the quality of food. And actually, many of them from affluent backgrounds, purportedly, said that over weekends their parents would come and pick them. They would depend on food or food services outside the university. So with this notion that gained traction, the university administration was now on pressure and actually carried out a survey on whether students would opt for money instead of food. And students answered in the affirmative. So we see that in 2018, we now completely phase out food, provision of food, and then students, the end users, would get the money directly on their accounts. So 6 years down the road, we are now starting to see issues cropping up over the decision that was made around 2018. Now what would happen is that government provides around 4,500 shillings to students to meet up with their day-to-day expenses. And earlier on, when we had service providers, when we had the universities providing food to students, you'd find that breakfast was 500 shillings. You'd find that a decent meal was 2,000 shillings. So for lunch and supper, you'd find that it made all the economic sense for someone to have 4,500. But we reached at a point whereby once these services were erased and students became the direct receivers of this money, we are looking at issues where private service providers have hiked prices and are taking advantage of the situation. So when we look at all this, when we look at this decision that was made, you find that now students are the ones suffering the effects, because there was a time whereby the service providers would get direct payment from government, and students, on the other hand, would just simply present a meal card and eat food the whole semester. Even when there was delayed payment, it was the service providers that were to suffer the consequences. And sometimes government would pay them maybe after 6 months, but at the end of the day, they would continue providing the service. Now this is normal. At the end of the day, now the students are their own caterers, they are their own cooks, and at the end of the day, they are suffering the effects of these delayed payments. Now moving back to the question of the right of association and what has been happening currently in Makerere, I was actually one of the student leaders that was issued a warning letter over advancing rights of my fellow students, along with this lady here I'm seated with. So we are looking at a situation where the times are different. Not so long ago, we would have institutions like Makerere University striking against unfair policies, striking against bad welfare of students, and actually the management would respond. But we have transitioned to one era where intimidation is being used as a tool by management to actually prevent students or their leaders from actually advancing the rights of their fellow students. And actually, in Makerere University, around I think that was 2022, where we lost a student, may his soul rest in peace. The unfortunate incident has actually been used as a tool by management to actually enact a draconian statute that is meant, one, to disenfranchise year one students from standing from elective positions. We are having a statute that has denied students or deprived them of their right to association, for example, with political parties. And you mentioned it, Drake, that this is actually, we are having a downward spiral in the quality of leaders, that in the end of the day, the leaders of today and tomorrow. So we are looking at a situation whereby if a student woke up one day and decided to challenge management over the welfare of students, you would be issued a warning letter or else suspended. If you try to rise up and march peacefully, you are going to be arrested. You're going to be met with brutality, ferocity, and things of that nature. So you are left, your hands are tied, you get. You're left curtailed with no other option. And that is actually the current situation at Makerere University. So even with the recent demonstrations that we had, where government-sponsored students actually rose up to actually demand for allowances that were overdue for over 3 months. We had students who were arrested. I mean, why are you arresting students who are not even violent, but simply demanding for what belongs to them? So this is a clarion call to our administration and administrations of all other institutions that, you see, our motto is to build for the future. But actually, if you evaluate, you realize that this is not being achieved. I mean, what kind of leader are you grooming if you're suppressing them at a level when they must learn what to do? Because it is through this that we actually get the tenacity, we get the perseverance to actually handle most of these issues. We look at Parliament and we see the likes of the Senyonyis, the people who speak truth to power, people who are very unapologetic. These are people that have been groomed right from a lower stage, and they are performing wonders. So how do they expect us to reach that level when they are not giving us a space to grow?
Thank you. That's a very critical question, and I think I would also now throw the ball in the court of Mr. President here to understand the context in Kyambogo, because we see that this is a cross-cutting issue in most of the institutions that we have in this country. That when students are freely trying to exercise their mandate and their right in terms of speaking what truly belongs to them or truth to power, as I said, they're either met with a warning letter, a suspension letter, or an expulsion letter. What is the context at Kyambogo?
It is actually, I think Kyambogo management is trying to borrow a riff from Makerere. But in Kyambogo, we have always had the privilege to express ourselves, and sometimes we would get feedback that is aligned with what we want. It is in this election that I realized that people have mastered the art of borrowing the negative. If Kyambogo University today borrowed a riff from Makerere of releasing marks in time, making sure that teaching and learning is highly effective, I would think that our management, I would commend them. But in the event that they also want to borrow a riff of oppressing, suppressing, punishing, marrying, it is unfortunate.
Yeah.
So I want to really, of course, make it very clear that when I was standing as the president, I promised students that I will leave the university better than how I found it. So in the event that management continuously wants to oppress students, it is not going to be under my watch as a leader. I usually try to do whatever I do within the law, because I do believe that we still have the privilege of some functioning judicial system to some extent.
Yeah.
So, bearing that in mind, in the event that management takes steps that are not provided for in the law, we shall seek legal redress. I know when we say that, they will say, oh, you will pay for this, they will embarrass you, you will not graduate. But I usually tell my brothers and sisters that we have come a very long way. No one knows even how we got where we are. Just like we don't know where we are going. We just have a vision of where we want to be, and that's it. So we will have no option but to fight for the truth. And I want to tell you that the difference between Kyambogo and elsewhere is that in Kyambogo, a warning letter is empowerment. When they warn someone, they feel more empowered to do what they were doing, because that's when they feel like it is right. And that is the confidence I want to give to my comrades and brothers in Makerere, that those warning letters can't be sent to 40,000 students. So in the event that the fight keeps on, I'm 100% sure that everything is going to be achieved. It is so wrong of the student population to keep believing that student leaders must do everything. The way you see the comrade Adronis and so many others suffering in Makerere. We have had protests for 2 days in Kyambogo, and I've not been physically in any of them. I think you understand now the difference in the populations. It should be adopted across board, across the country, especially in institutions, that leaders are there as advocates of the bigger voice behind. So when managements are pinpointing leaders, there will be no option except the majority rising against the oppression. What is happening in Makerere is saddening. We were there for a benchmark of our accommodation policy, and I was really surprised. But do you think this pressure is going to keep building for long? Absolutely not. I am 100% sure. Time will tell. Students of Makerere will stand up once again. It may not be today. But the more the society gets informed of the vices that are eating us up, the better it gets for them to advocate for better. The narrative in Kyambogo is different. For us, we do not sit at a table where oppression is being discussed. I cannot sit at a table, and so are my electorate. They do not. And that is the vision I would pray students in Makerere bear. Today, if I'm issued a warning letter, because we have been warned verbally, do this, you will see this, do this, you will see this. But even our own parents have even at points disowned us because we have gone against the values they thought they had implanted in us. But the spirit of speaking and sticking to the truth must always prevail. And that is why I feel that even if I went home today in Kyambogo, I would go home a proud man, because I have left behind a population of people who understand their rights, can be beaten for their rights, but still, as I speak, they are still saying, now, if you don't want to free our people, we are coming back. But of course, I would love my brothers and sisters to always bear in mind the difference between recklessness and courageousness. In the event that you understand the force has no option but to malice, bloodshed, we will sit back and seek legal redress. If this country prioritizes education, prioritizes the welfare of students and the rights of students, then they will listen to our cry. Because I have not lost hope. Sometimes I am forced to lose it. But other days I sit and reassure myself that now, as the first student, because the guild, you're the first student. So as the first student, if you don't have hope, then who has? If as student leaders, we are now being pressed to a point where we can't honestly do something, then who will avail solutions for the students? In 2017, in St. Henry's Chetovu, where I was, we requested for a march at 3 in the night, we went to the brother's residence and said, brother, we want to watch. We were doing UNEB. So at the point when the brother was going to chase us, I had the privilege of talking on behalf of my other colleagues, because being the most stubborn face, because at the start of the meeting when all parents had gathered and colleagues who are classmates, the brother said, that Mwebesa, for him, he's a special case. He even asked me, who are you to deny us the TV? So come in front. And you know the respect these religious leaders hold. So I was like a deputy Satan in making that day. When I had chance to speak, because I was denied the chance, because he was very sure I will turn the conversation, I told him one thing, that you can't put a dog in the corner and overbeat it and expect it to say thank you. It will definitely bite you and run away. The same way, a lot is happening in our public institutions, from Makerere, UCU, across board. Operation is being done. A time is going to come when all these students will be like the other dog in the corner that is waiting for an angle to bite you. What will they do? They will jump at whoever will be there and set themselves free. We've had multiple revolutions across the world where students have led and championed change. 27 graduates in 1980 went to the bush with 27 guns, and these graduates have held Uganda
for close to 40
at a ransom for close to 40 years. I am not a prophet of doom. Today, we have very many informed Ugandans who have phones but have turned the war into a war of text. Ugandans now can only fight by texting. We are tired of this parliament. If we went and marched to parliament collectively as Ugandans, what would be the narrative? I feel and I'm sure that you can only harvest what you have planted. If these people plant oppression, they plant malice, they plant sabotage, it is exactly what they will harvest. It's only a matter of time, but I'm 100% sure that when that time comes, when you can no longer bear, you understand, like a human being, everyone has boundaries within which we exist. I usually mathematically speak that there is a lower and upper limit. Beyond the upper limit, there is almost nothing meaningful. So when we get to that point where everyone is saturated properly, then these managements will reap exactly what they sowed. It is, of course, usually advice, very free advice, that I usually give from a student leader perspective, that we need to normalize the art of win-win. If the students have a demand, let the management strike a balance between the request of the student and the interest of the government they serve to achieve a common good. In the event that they bend to one side, higher odds are the students will always rise against that. So let us have it and bear it in mind that it is pertinent of us as leaders, as managers, who act for and on behalf of government, universities, and students themselves, that we may not achieve a win in a game of win or lose, but we can attain a draw, which is a win-win situation for everyone, where everyone has a point to take home, an achievement to take home, and that is where we score.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
John, as we reach towards the first half of the conversation, just quickly also take us through in terms of security, welfare of the students of Kyambogo. What is it like?
Thank you so much once again, Drake. Now, about the security of Kyambogo University for the students, first of all, I wouldn't say that it is the best, but it is at least trying. However, now, when you look at the current situation in the university, whereby over 20 students have been arrested, there is no good picture that I can paint for the security right now. However, for some of the other works that we have been doing, especially with the events and what, they have been good and supportive, and they have been actually helping. It was, for example, the previous Freshers' Ball, it was the first Freshers' Ball whereby there was no fight, no student was beaten, and nothing was stolen from students. So at that point, it was good. However, now when it comes into the point of operation and whereby management now, the top management of the university is now trying to compromise the security for it to take away that win-win situation he's talking about that we are supposed to take as students. Now, there I have no good to say to the security of Kyambogo University. Because if you look at the reason as to why students are striking, for example, now student leadership, which is supposed to be transiting right now, changing to another leadership, it is one of the importances of the students' welfare of the university. So it is one of the ways we are mentoring young people or people in campus for the outside world. Because if I tell you the experience that I've gotten in leadership right now, it is paramount, like it is too much. So I am being prepared for the outside world. And this is the opportunity that you're denying these other leaders that are coming. And then you're using security, which is supposed to be an independent aspect, an independent department in the university, to do what? To compromise the situation or to deny these rights to the students. So, to me, it is in that perspective, that's how I understand it. However, in the other things, for example, the security of the property in the university, the main problem, for example, now at Kyambogo University, I'm talking about Kyambogo because I know it more than any other university, we also still have some of these other challenges that may not be due to the security, but are also due to maybe the university itself, given that it still has the porous entries and there is that bit of the perimeter wall like the way you see Makerere. So that is also a very big issue at the university there, and that you cannot blame it on the security itself. However, there is promises, like as usual, there's promises that
there will be worked on, and
it is going to be worked on and what. So basically, that's it.
All right, thank you, Daisy. As we go towards the break, trying to understand, particularly I'm interested this time on the mental aspect. We have seen numerous students that, when we started our conversation, who have committed suicide on grounds of mental anguish, torture, stress, depression, among other issues that are mentally related. And be that we are in this generation where mental health is a crucial aspect that affects various and very many students, but across board, very many Ugandans. That is an issue that I would like you to speak about, the mental well-being of our students. Because students are frustrated with missing marks, among other issues.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Drake. First, I'll start by adding on to what Right Honorable Prime Minister said. So in Makerere University, we have the private-sponsored students and then the government-sponsored students. So the government students, they are further divided into the government residents and then the government non-residents. So the government residents actually receive, I think, 530,000 per semester. Then the government non-residents receive 736,000 per semester. So for the government non-residents, that's both living out and the food allowances. So if you're to realize from that, we are having students receiving on a daily basis 4,500 Ugandan shillings to cater for both, to cater for them throughout the whole day, which is actually very little. So the money they give us is quite very little, and on top of that, we have to use a lot of effort to get the money, you understand? So in the current state in Uganda, if you're looking at 4,500 Ugandan shillings, you're having breakfast, you're having lunch, you're having supper. Because this is a student, they have to walk to their classroom to have lectures, they have to engage in discussions, they have to run up and down. So they're spending a lot of energy, and 4,500 is really, really very little. So first of all, can that money be increased to about maybe 10,000? Because in other universities, I think Busitema University, their administration was able to send a budget catering for each student to be able to have 10,000 Ugandan shillings per day. So it depends on which university are you from. So is Makerere submitting a small budget, or maybe they're actually submitting a higher budget, but then students actually not getting the money, and all these factors end up affecting the students, because you realize that if you don't have enough money to even eat, or maybe because in Chikoni, if you're living out, for example, allowances, renting a small place in Chikoni is 150,000 Ugandan shillings. That is for 1 month. But then a semester has how many months? 3 months. So you're going to multiply 150 times 3, that is 450,000. However, from the 736,000 they've given you, they are catering 230 for living out. So either way, you have to look for more money for your accommodation. These students do not work, they're in school most of the time. So even where to sleep, we're having challenges with students, like where to sleep. You're having girls maybe looking out for sugar daddies and what, to try to, balance exactly. So because of that, their mental health really is greatly affected. You have to look for where to get money from. You have to look for your dressing, because you're a student. You're not going to just move, in a very disorganized manner. You have to look for all that money. So in the long run, you find students are very stressed. Add on academic challenges. We have goals. Maybe I want to have a first class. Maybe I want to have this. But then if you're looking for money to feed, at the same time you have to read really. How are you going to balance without even enough glucose to take you throughout the whole day? You understand? So the students are very, very stressed. And because of that, we're having counselors in that maybe different schools, different colleges try to help with the whole stress management and what. However, we cannot be trying to save students from stress, well, in the long run, causing the same stress to them. So you don't expect me to keep telling counselors, keep counseling students, but then you're not giving them allowances. It doesn't make sense. So if you want to help the students mentally, maybe in the medical field, let's help them, but also trying to curb what is actually causing the what. Let's remove the primary cause of the issue. Then maybe we can say, maybe in case of other things, let the counselors be there. But then let's try to solve, if it's financial, let's try to see how do the students get money, how are they helped. You understand?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Those are very true and very crucial submissions that you've made right there. Let's just quickly go for a short break. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media, or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Welcome back from that break. Just before we went into the break, we were discussing the underlying issues that affect students' welfare. And we have discussed various dissecting issues from political welfare, social welfare, mental welfare, among others. And right now, I just want us to bring a perspective from the private institutions. Alive to the fact that we have colleagues and friends who go to private institutions, I thought we'd like to understand the context. And from what we gather, I just want to begin with you, Reagan. We have colleagues in private institutions who oftentimes are not, we do not see or hear much from them in terms of demonstrations or riots, among others. What is it that is different? Are the private institutions managed better? Are the students in the private institutions having a better social welfare than the ones in public institutions?
Thank you for that question. But the truth is that private institutions are better in the aspects that usually make us fight. A case in point is results. Those people have results on time. It's the biggest cause of conflict in Kyambogo. But the reality is as well known behind the scenes that I think most of the students there are scared up to a point where they can even hardly talk. I'm not going to mention the name, but we had a guild president's meeting. Very unfortunately, my comrade from Makerere, I think, had left the country by then. Where a guild president from one of the private institutions said, I'm even scared if they know I am here, I may lose my student status. So you imagine, if a president can be scared to a point of attending a meeting and it is illegal, what about the student this president represents? I'm reliably informed some private institutions do not have guild presidents as members of their university council. They do not have presidents and senate representatives of students. So these students may be silent because of lack of information, first of all. A privilege we enjoy in public institutions, where you're not paid, but you'll be told that, we are not going to pay you now because ABC. The other side, remember, they're not entitled to any payments. They're the ones who pay. And they pay very heavily. I even have a feeling that these students keep quiet because they have already a very big stone
To carry.
on their heads to carry. You imagine yourself fighting that, hey, now make sure that this main hall looks better, but you have 7 million to pay. You get it? So I think, and I mentioned this in my presentation at State House, that the President of the Republic of Uganda needs to instruct the minister, who is actually a very close person to him, I think closer than any other Ugandan, of education, to take deliberate steps and better private education. It is evident that most of the students are in public institutions because of cutting down on costs. Majority of the students in private are there because the public could not trap in all these numbers. So now that public cannot bear the burden, and now the burden is transferred to private, let the government as well take deliberate steps, especially within its powers, of regulating and ensuring that the students' welfare is paramount.
Yeah.
I'm also reliably informed that one of the reasons why these students are silent is the setting. If you transit in a setting where talking is punishable, you may never talk. If, for example, we came to this show and they said, you must cut your hair to be here, higher chances are even my sister would have it off, or she would never have attended. You get the argument? So now the reality that is in private institutions where it has been a culture that they don't talk, many adopt the culture. I attended the traditional school where we used to eat chicken every Thursday. I can tell you, even when there are no hens in Africa, they may import. Because these guys have a culture and they have adopted the culture for almost as long as ever. So it may be a culture of these students to keep quiet even when they are facing grievances. But I do believe that going forward, as our society gets sharpened, as they also keep getting the privilege of accessing comrades like Adroni and John and Daisy, who have rights and they stand for their rights, they will as well pick updates on which issues that they can address. Bearing in mind that the truth is, we may accept today or tomorrow, but public institutions are better than private in some extents, especially with staffing and service delivery. But when you go to welfare of students in terms of health, when you go to academic excellence, when you go to satisfying their calendar, the academic calendar, private institutions are way ahead of us. In UCU, a student who was a year behind me has graduated. And then there is me who is almost getting a bachelor's in studying a bachelor's. Why? Either my calendar is not followed, or the staffing levels are really punishable by the law if we followed. Because if you find a university operating at 30% staffing, it means that for every 10 students, for actually every 3,000 students, you find almost one staff member. So you imagine, we have had scenarios, it is even laughable, where a student studies a whole semester without seeing a lecture. In a public institute, it can never happen in a private, because the management is very streamlined there that you dare miss and go. So in terms of service delivery, private institutions are taking us by the storm, because they have very clearly defined boundaries, very streamlined processes, and even the bureaucracy is small. Approvals are done there and then, payments are done there and then. The solution is from within. You can even have a time when students are demonstrating, and even a vice chancellor doesn't have an answer. In a public, you will find out from Makerere, where students go to the Senate, and the VC saying, oh, so they have now scheduled, we shall go to Ministry of Finance. After Finance, they are going to the President. It is bureaucracy that is killing us, something that is not in the private, and they are scoring. I have not said they are not okay. From issues of payments and huge amounts of money paid, they are not okay. But in terms of service delivery, my brother, there are times when you're striking for year 2 marks in year 4, and the student at UC is like, are you serious? You don't have these marks. You get it? They have normalized what a student needs, and they have availed it. Lastly, as I wind up, there may be peace in private institutions because of the minimal things students are entitled to. A student in Kyambogo, for example, a student on the government, is entitled to an allowance, entitled to good and sensible and reasonable accommodation, entitled to voting and all these rights we hold. Whereas a student in UCU is almost not entitled to anything. They're only entitled to having marks and studying. Do they even provide food? Absolutely not.
For residents,
food for residents. Any allowances? Almost nothing. So you find that our levels of entitlement in the public institutions and our rights are the causes of the differences in types of populations. But we need to also bear in mind that our core values as universities and our objectives of achievement shape a lot the differences in our institutions. If, for example, the motto of Makerere is we build for the future, the motto of Kyambogo is knowledge and skills for service, but amongst its core values is community engagement and shaping of leaders, you will not expect them to be the same as in a different setting where it is not within their power. The instruments that empower us are different. And the reason why the fight is elongated in a public setting is because of what empowers us. What empowers us is, for example, an act of parliament and the universities and tertiary institutions which establishes us and gives us so many rights. Unlike the private, which is established under the act but not regulated at the end of the day.
Yeah.
What is regulated is simply a course, for example, at the review stage, but they can't review how much a student pays in this private, because at the end of the day, government doesn't share with them the costs they incur as a private institution. So there could be so many theories that we can discuss and present forward, especially when it comes to discussing private institutions. But my message should be very simple, that the government of Uganda should take deliberate and be intentional with the steps to regulate private institutions, especially to do with payments, to do with welfare, to do with the social behavior of these students. Because at the end of the day in the job market, we are not segregated from where we came from. We are segregated by what we can do and the types of personalities we hold as individuals.
Yeah.
So basically that's it. And I hope maybe we can elongate the discussion even beyond this. But as we move forward, there should be steps taken to make private education better, given the fact that the government of Uganda cannot take in these rising numbers of students in their facilities.
All right.
Thank you.
Rodney, quality versus quantity, a conversation that we also need to have as we reach towards the end of our conversation. His submission entirely encompasses private versus public, but also that goes needless to say that we need to have the conversation of quantity versus quality. And the quality that these past few years private institutions seemingly are producing is maybe in terms of the service that they're offering, in terms of teaching, in terms of on-time results, and making sure that the students' well-being is catered for. The other argument could be the quantity is looked at in terms of students that come out of government institutions. They have not had the best of education. Lecturers have barely come to class. For the science students, they do not have access to practical materials in terms of enough training facilities for the medical students, among others. All that can be argued. So quality versus quantity. Take us through that debate.
You see, Mr. Drake, not so long ago, I think, actually over the period of the last 1 month, we've had challenges where we had the Joint Staff Association of Makerere laying down their tools, having a sit-down strike, and this emanated from failure for the management to harmonize salaries, staff salaries. Now, these are myths in private institutions. You see, we had courses, especially at my college and very many other colleges, where students have been in class for about 2 months and haven't studied some modules, where we have students out of 5 course units, because for me this semester I've been studying 5 course units, but out of the 5 I've had 3 solid lecturers attending to class, and the rest has all been a gamble. So when we bring that to context, you realize that what actually constitutes to quality is actually somewhat lacking in private institutions. Much as many people find it is very prestigious to study from public institutions, but given the wars that keep going on with this institution, there is always a compromise on quality. Recently, I had a conversation with a colleague of mine from Daisy University, and he was actually telling me, just like Comrade Mwebesa was actually trying to put it, then this man asked me that, at Makerere University, what is wrong with you people? Even when we had a forum where we had an inter-university dialogue where we had guild leaders from different universities, I think last year, our brothers from IU, I think the guild president by then, actually raised his arm and was asking, but what is wrong with Makerere University? As in, can some of these challenges be solved amicably with management? Same with the Comrade Bruno Kamoga. And it is very hard to explain, but just as he put it, is that private institutions, given that Uganda is a free laissez-faire economy, private institutions are directly not under regulation by government, which is different from the realities in private institutions, to that extent that some of the draconian policies that have been passed within our institutions are actually a directive from the topmost offices with intentions we don't know why, but it is happening, and it is a sad reality. So coming back to the discussion of quality versus quantity, I would agree that students in private institutions pay a lot of money. I have a friend of mine who studied from KIU. He's currently doing medicine. And he, after a year, because they were paying 5.5 million per semester, and after 3 semesters, that was first year and part of second year, he was forced to change to come to Makerere University, where he was given, I think you pay around 2 million something. So if you look at this money that is being paid, the university has a moral obligation, for lack of a better word, to give some services commensurate to the amount of money that people pay. For example, I'm going to pay all that money, and at the end of the day, I'm going to have challenges accessing my marks. These things of missing marks, I haven't really had them prevailing so much in private institutions, but it has become a norm in public institutions. Actually, if you were to finish 4 years of study without having an issue with missing marks, with misplaced marks, sometimes when our lecturers don't mark our exams, can you imagine? Because we have examples of lecturers. I hope my lecturer does not tune into this space. Nonetheless, we have a lecturer who has taught us from year 1 up to year 4, and he has never marked any of our papers. At the end of the day, you find a mark planted on your portal, and you actually start wondering where it came from. So we are looking at quality versus quantity. So you realize that some of these challenges are more predominant in private and public institutions as a result of the variance in what we actually pay. Those people pay so much money. And Drake, I don't know how much you're paying, but I know you're from private institution, and I know you can resonate with this discussion. Private students, private universities, have a moral obligation to actually give services that match what they pay. But then also, coming back to public universities, we also, as he clearly put it, is that even in terms of the quality or the services that are offered, have you ever entered an office in a public university and do you see how, as if some of these people don't like their jobs? Because at Makerere University, I'm telling you, the worst thing you should pray for as you're starting in year 1 is not to have an incident where you're going to approach a public office, where you're going to go and maybe you have issues with missing marks. You will go through hell. I recently had a mark that was missing, and I had to actually, over a period of 2 months, I was moving up and down. You come back, the officer, the person in office looks at you as if you're a drug addict. They look at you in a very funny way. They chase you out. At the end of the day, you have to be humble. Otherwise, you're not going to get the service. So these are things that you're not going to find in private universities. Definitely not. So much as there is a privilege attached to being part or having an education in private universities, there is still so much to do. There is still so much to improve to actually match the standard of private universities. Thank you.
All right. Daisy, what can be done differently to improve particularly the mental welfare of the students, considering that predominantly we see particularly the girl child falling prey to men who are offering them pocket change in terms of monies for the weekend, money to buy clothes to feed themselves. And that is an issue that has cut across various institutions and affecting very many girls. What can be done differently?
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Drake. I think I'll start with a saying that says charity begins at home, and everyone should be a brother's or sister's keeper. You understand? So if you're in that hostel, you're in that hall, and you're seeing that someone doesn't have what to eat, but then you know you can actually share something, please go ahead and do what? and share. Maybe if we can go to, maybe look out for, maybe go to the administration, see where we can actually engage with them, and then ensure that there is timely delivery of those funds to allow the students to be able to afford certain things. I think that would also be a very good contribution. But then also, in Makerere University, we have this, it's called peer buddy, whereby we realize that there are certain, in various colleges, we handpick students to be able to look out for those maybe depressed students suffering from anxiety, and then we are able to do what? To take care of them. We should be the first people to actually get to notice that someone is not feeling well. Then we can actually maybe connect them to hospitals, counselors, and the likes. So really my contribution would be that everyone, it's a collective effort. Every student has a right. Every student must actually come in the fight. Be a brother's keeper, be a sister's keeper. If you notice signs of depression in someone is not, they're isolating themselves, they don't want to come to class, someone has been missing lectures. Actually, we've been having cases whereby someone misses lectures for a week, they go to check in mortuary and someone actually passed on. But then, you know, if you had friends and maybe someone who was looking at you, watching your movements, when you miss one day, actually they can look for you in your hostel, see what's going on, then maybe if it's food, they can help you. If it's maybe a disease, maybe you're not feeling well, they can connect you to the health centers and everything. So everyone should be a brother's keeper, a sister's keeper. Then also we've been talking about public institutions and private. I would love to maybe add on. So if you're to realize in private institutions, most of them have the leisure to handpick the students they actually take in. If you look at KIU, if you cannot afford the 5.5 million, you're not going to be in what? In KIU. And then because of that, most students who are actually going to get into KIU, UCU, will be the students who can what? Afford the 5.5 million. I know, yes, there will be some who are struggling and everything, but then you will not keep up. Just like he said, his friend, at the end of, in the second year, first semester, he changed to what? To Makerere University. So those students, because they can afford the 5.5 million, you will not see them maybe having issues like, I cannot afford lunch, or maybe I don't have breakfast.
But they do at times.
Yeah, they do.
All, people are students, so it's not like it's ideal that because in a private institution and you pay 5.5, you pay 7 million, you can afford the basics such as food and accommodation.
Yes, that's true. But I'm saying the majority of the cases are actually going to be in in public universities. Why? Makerere is going to admit students from Kaberamaido, Karamojo, and district quota, but then private institutions are not going to admit students on what? On district quota or what? So most of the students, maybe government-sponsored students, district quota students actually need that scholarship. And we have students in Makerere University that solely rely on the what? On that allowance that's given by the government. They don't have parents, they don't have siblings. You're the only hope in your family. Everyone is saying, you know what, Daisy, please, even on that money that you're receiving, they're actually saying some 5,000, you understand. But then if you see the private institutions, they are not receiving those particular category of what? Of students. Yes, I get that they are having their own challenges, but then why are we having maybe students dying in Makerere University, Kyambogo University? Why are we having more strikes in Makerere University, Kyambogo University, but not maybe in UCU, KIU? You understand? I know they have their own challenges, but then, you know, it being a public university, it's getting to choose, you know, they use academic excellence. Do you have the points to get into what? Into Makerere University, irrespective of whether you have maybe you have your parent can afford, or maybe your sister can help you out. So that's why you're having more of the predominance of those challenges in what? In public universities. Then also, in private universities, you will see that we're having set rules and regulations. Like, I Adiru Daisy, I can wake up today and I'm going to create this university. And I'll have certain rules and regulations that it will be running by. So you're not going to come a new student and you feel like you're just going to put a strike on me. If you cannot abide by the rules and regulations of this university, then you should what? You should leave, because it's a private university, not a public. It's not a public institution whereby it's governed by the government. We are having individuals that are in charge, and so they're not going to accept these strikes and everything. They will try to suppress the students as much as they can, because they are in charge of the universities.
All right, thank you. John, as we reach towards the end of the conversation, what are the recommendations that you would offer us in terms of what can be done differently to improve the welfare of students in Kyambogo and beyond?
Okay, thank you so much, Drake. Now, I would first of all add on what the three panelists have submitted about private versus public. First of all, me, according to my understanding, I see the issue rotating around money, and it all depends on how these institutions handle finances in their institutions. So if you look at a private setting or a private university, that finances are handled there and then. The person who handles them, the accounting officer there, if there's a requisition that has moved, clearance is done from there and then. But then when you go back to the public institutions, the finances, the way they handle the money, the topmost person, who is the accounting officer, the university secretary, stops at approving and signing there. And then the rest of the work, he has no control as well. So what that causes, and there is also this, that the government clicks payment, or the ministry clicks payment when there is liquid cash. So the government releases money in words without liquid. So if you make a requisition and it passes the university secretary, after you convincing everyone, from the dean of students, actually from the guild president, dean of students, bursars and what, and it is uploaded to the system, now it goes to the ministry. The ministry will now click when they have liquid cash on them. And what that is going to cause, it's going to cause the demotivation of staff. Because now if, for example, someone has made a requisition right now, and then you have to wait for more 4 weeks to do what? To receive that payment. And you had calculated to do some other stuff of yours. So it means that money is coming just to add on, but it is not serving what you had intended it to serve. So that is already demoralization. And that happens in, like what he said, that you go to an office and you find someone is actually like not willing to listen to you, or things like that. So that's what causes it. And then for the other private, I also look at it as a business, because they are owned by businessmen, rich people. And you know what the principle of businessmen? It is profit maximization. So if he cannot do anything when he's not looking at profits, it is impossible. And that's why you see these tuitions increasing and what. And the good thing also about businessmen, they also want to emphasize service delivery. If I have put up a business and I want it to offer this to society, because also the other principle in business is that you have to keep a customer. So if you don't keep a customer, then you have no aim in business, because the customer makes your business. So this person, the way of keeping a customer is holding the staff accountable, or administrators accountable, or the lecturers accountable. So it means they will try their best to do what? To deliver the best. And that's how they have the best, maybe students' welfare services there, and then very fake in public institutions. And then also what my friend Daisy said, that by the time someone affords to pay 7 million in UCU, then there is that narrative that maybe that someone can afford some things. So that is why you see those institutions are calm. Because even when I try now to take you back to when we had a strike of tuition increment at Kyambogo University, we had complaints from private institutions, UCU, KIU, they were abusing us, that you have a program, you're paying 800, and you're complaining that they have increased to 1.2. By 50% to 1.3.
But that just tells you the general overview of the disparities that we have in our society.
Yes.
That education has been greatly commoditized, that we think that because someone is paying 800,000, maybe they don't have a right to speak or complain. Exactly. Forgetting our various backgrounds and forgetting that we all come from different financial, backgrounds and capacities. I think also that's a conversation for another day. But bottom line is, this country, first of all, requires an overhaul on the education sector in terms of improving or standardizing education in terms of what is supposed to be paid. You cannot tell me that we're having this conversation and someone in nursery is paying more than what someone in Kyambogo University is paying.
Exactly.
Definitely.
Yeah, so that is a conversation we need to have all together, but as you were saying.
So now what the government has to do in order, because we say that education is a service, not a business, and that's what the government is supposed to emphasize. to make sure these policies that are drafted in universities, or either private or public, let them be emphasizing education as a service, not specifically a business. Because once you do a business and you're offering better services this side, then the other side where they are doing it as a service and they are providing poor services, then it means a certain population of the country is left out on these good services.
And it's the majority.
Yeah, and it's the majority, because in Uganda, right now, the majority, I think they are the most financially unstable people. And the government has also mastered the art of using the lack of what you love most to manipulate you. Because if it starves you for 6 months, and then at the end of the 6 months, it brings a meal, you at high chances going to accept what they are bringing to you. And that is manipulation. So back to the question that you asked me, how we can improve the welfare of students. First of all, I've already said that the policies have to be redrafted in order to ensure independent departments in these institutions. Because if you look at security being used by the top management to arrest students who are fighting for their rights, then it means these are actually being used by some people. But in actual sense, they're supposed to be independent and they're supposed to be listening to both sides. So if they can do that, then that would be well and good. And then the other thing is also the government and these institutions, the managers and what, we should also consider the aspect of consistency in the way we do things. If you can bear me witness that you look at the public institutions or the bodies, or maybe let's go to infrastructure, public infrastructure owned by government. Look at its maintenance and how, okay, you look at its maintenance vis-a-vis the private. First of all, for now I will bring for the case of the halls in Kyambogo University, which are catering for accommodation of government students there and some private students, of course. You look at the conditions that they are in. The condition that they are in is because of the poor maintenance that has happened since 1950 something, because those halls are old. The halls of, I think, immediately after independence, that's when they were constructed. But you see a hall, there is water passing through a wall. How is that justifiable, surely? Yes. So now, for that case of maintenance, it goes back to the consistency in that most of the institutions in Uganda, we are leaving out that aspect of consistency. We look at maybe doing something, and then after some time, maybe you have achieved your own thing. You're not looking at a long-term goal. But if we can all change our mindset to focusing at a bigger picture, right from the student leaders, from the top managers, and then to the government and the people, the general population that use these structures or that use these services, then the Uganda that we are aiming at would surely be a nice one. But if you don't do that, then we have nowhere we're going. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Daisy, as your concluding remarks.
Yes, thank you so much. I had an addition. So most of Makerere University, because we are having strikes and everything because of leaving out allowances, I still feel like the administration has a pivotal role to play in this. Because tell me why Busitema University is having each student receiving 10,000, but Makerere University we are having each student receiving 4,500 shillings per day. You understand? So I feel like the administration, while in Busitema University they are submitting a budget of 10,000 per student, in Makerere University we are submitting a budget of what? Of 4,500 shillings per day. So I feel like the administration has to really come up. As much as with the student leaders, we are working together with them. Actually, today I was talking to the Mwebesa president. She was telling me that she actually had to go to the Ministry of Finance to find out what is actually happening, what is the problem, why are students receiving their funds, and why are we receiving threats that they are going to do away with what? With government allowances, with financing and everything. And when she reached there, she was told that yes, Makerere University submitted a budget of 28 billion, and 8 billion is for government, it's for student allowances. However, because the budget is so heavy, they hadn't yet done anything about it. But then I feel like we should prioritize students' interests first. Why do we have to wait for students to die in rooms? Why do we have to wait for students to have peptic ulcer disease, maybe, and the complications therein for us to start acting. So if the university is to submit a budget, start with leaving out allowances. It's just 8 billion. Submit and tell them, you know what, by the first 2 weeks of the semester, students should have received their allowances because they need these allowances to run their daily activities, food, accommodation. So we need to prioritize students first. Instead of sending a budget of maybe 28 billion at first, let's first send the 8 billion, ensure that they are worked on, and then we can send other things. Actually, when she went there, they were telling her that, you know what, the budget was so big, but then we are going to actually work on the students first. Since you've come and told us, well, let's first like sign in this 8 billion, then we can later see what to do with the 20 billion. However, I'm thinking, why do student leaders have to be the ones to walk to Ministry of Finance? Why can't it be our administration? Because they're the ones in charge. So again, I still feel like the administration has a big role to play. Yes, we are student leaders. We can come in and then keep on fighting for the students, telling them what's happening on ground. But then they also have to help us as we help the students. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you. Rodney, concluding remarks.
Concluding remarks as well as solutions. Drake, me, I have one solution. Food. People want to eat food. You see, let us scale it down to what constitutes welfare. Earlier in the precursor, I actually mentioned that if a student can sleep well, if a student can eat food, which is the most important, if they can study, then their well-being would have been catered for. You see, recently, when the First Lady was at Makerere, and she was launching the Emerging Leaders Program, we got to find out very worrying statistics that one girl at Makerere University, every one girl, 1 in 5 girls has 5 sexual partners. And I think these were statistics that had been carried out after research. So look at a picture whereby every one student has 5 sexual partners in year 1. By the time they finish, how many sexual partners do they have? So, but my parting shots will not be premised on the validity of these statistics, but actually the underlying cause. You see, Drake, when government came up with the idea of erasing catering services or providing food to students, that is when most of these issues started cropping up. We reached a point whereby people can go a day without eating, a day, 2, 3 days without eating, which was not the case before. Do you get it? And as I mentioned earlier, that it has disproportionately affected females, that nowadays females are left with no option but to go on lunch dates and dinners with strangers to have what to eat. They don't have what to eat. So why don't we bring back these services? That instead of, I'm fine with government sponsorship being transitioned into food. Give people food, don't give people money. No one is going to lack. You see, Drake, as I conclude, I want to say that there is no amount of research or morality lectures that are going to stop a desperate student from looking for what to look for what to eat, be it having sex. People now have decided to cohabit because they don't have what to eat. They're at campus. I have very many friends of mine. So there is no amount of morality lectures that are going to stop a hungry student from getting food at whatever means necessary. So the solution is government should bring back food services to students. Let us go back to the old system of meal cards. We are going to have less issues of running up and down with government. At the end of the day, a student will not lack what to eat. A student will have where to sleep, and a student will study. I thank you.
Thank you. Mr. President, your parting shots.
My parting shot is that forceful fasting has never been healthy. If you find You know the Bible says that if you get problems, pray. If the problems persist, fast. Now, what happens when you're forcefully fasting every day? We are tired of praying for this country forcefully. You get it?
Yeah.
So it should be something that must be done if we want to address an issue of government students once and for all. One, hike their pay, increase their money to fit the current standard. If you can't meet that, then do the bare minimum. What is the bare minimum? Avail food and accommodation for them. Let me tell you, Drake, I have been discussing with so many of my friends that what you need in life after campus, for example, is decent accommodation, food, and something to sometimes occupy you. But even if you don't have a job, but you have where to sleep and what to eat, life is sorted. Now, a hungry mind is an angry mind. I am feeling pain for administrators all the time. Because, you know, the reality about education, education is the only business where you're dealing with uninterested clients. A guy is teaching theories, but do you really think we love what we are doing? We are just uninterested clients who are just forced by circumstance to occupy a position and then go away after a time that is stipulated. So now I imagine a gentleman dealing with uninterested, hungry clients. It is a very funny scenario. So moving forward, there should be steps that are taken as soon as possible. Either increase the money for government students if education is a priority. I don't think, you see, now if Kyambogo, for example, operates on a budget of 138 billion for a whole year, it means that government students can't even take away 5 billion. So if you now give them 10 billion, will this country collapse? Absolutely not. If education is a priority. Because I want to tell you that if a government student is financially well positioned, higher odds are a private student won't struggle. Why? Because there is a spirit of comradeship. There is a spirit of, if Adroni has a meal card and I'm already struggling with my private fees, Adroni may forego supper for my case. But in the event that I don't have and Adroni doesn't have, then we are running a hopeless society.
True.
So moving forward, we should take deliberate steps as the government of Uganda, because the government is us anyway. Either to hike these fees to fit the current standard.
Actually, there is a very high cost of living.
Extremely.
Makerere is in the metropolitan area, Kyambogo. Urban areas,
Extremely.
very high
We
cost
are
of living.
competing for rent with working class people amidst minimal expenses. I don't know how it's in the knowledge of people to sit in parliament to preside over a decision of 4,500, yet at parliament you can't even buy lunch, breakfast of 4,500. Because parliament is a representation of Uganda. We don't have first-class Ugandans, no. Every Ugandan who is not a first-class Ugandan is a first-class Ugandan in transit. Because that's what we are working towards. So moving forward, we should avail food and accommodation as the bare minimum. Alternatively, they can as well adopt the culture of making sure that they hike the fees for government students to have a decent, befitting life. Lastly, because our president loves being popular and loved, in the event that he has failed to manage the government scholarship, let him take it off such that it is popularly known that the president of Uganda failed to avail even the bare minimum of a Ugandan, which is a right to education. Such that it will go down in books of history that in the reign of His Excellency Museveni, education was not prioritized. Other than quoting, education is free, education is available, yet behind the scenes, there is almost nothing that resembles the reality of having quality education.
Sure.
My parting shot is that student welfare is paramount, but an important component in welfare is feeding and accommodation. You cannot even bother about security when you are hungry.
You become the insecurity.
You become insecurity yourself. If I'm satisfied and I have where to sleep, then why should I loiter in the night, stealing around people's things?
Yeah.
If my welfare is really looked at as a priority, then I do believe our society will be a little bit more accommodative. Regardless of our differences, regardless of our differences in ideologies, we can always prevail over a society that welcomes our differences, accepts them, and takes them in. In the event that we are not taken care of, we'll always have a society that pulls ropes. You can even, let me tell you, the hardest argument you can ever have is an argument with a hungry person who has no hope of the next meal.
True.
And that is what the government of Uganda has chosen to have in public institutions by deliberately refusing to avail even the bare minimum for students. And that is something that they must take on and address as soon as possible to have a very accommodative society. Thank you so much.
Actually, there's a student who said that I'd rather die of a bullet than die
Die
of
of
hunger.
hunger. It is better, it is a safer way to die. A faster way to keep quiet than young to death.
All right. You've heard it there from the student leaders from Kyambogo and Makerere University. Very interesting conversation. Thank you very much, John, Rodney, Daisy, and His Excellency Reagan for taking time to join us in this conversation. It's been interesting and very engaging and enlightening as well. To your dear esteemed viewers, thank you very much for watching. To the technical crew, Paul, Brittany, and Ronald for making this possible, Civic Space TV, and the Center for Constitutional Governance for bringing this to you. Otherwise, my name is Douglas Drake Onen. See you next week, same time, same place. Bye-bye.